foolish mortals.
Hello there. Are you insane? Get out of here!
Remain seated with your seatbelt fastened.
Right, off you go.
Welcome to Average Joe Orlando. Hey, theme park goers. Welcome to another episode of Average Joe Orlando. Today we're going to deep dive Epcot Extinct Attractions. I wanted to do this one immediately after I recorded the Magic Kingdom Extinct Attraction, so if you haven't listened to that, go back and find it. It's good. On my deep dives, I like to deep dive. I like to look into some history about things, learn a little bit more. As somebody who feels like they know everything about theme parks, there's always something that you don't. And I could happily say I did learn some things about this. I like to look back and kind of see what used to be there, what kind of remains there, and it's fun. I'm definitely that nerd that when you go to the parks with me, I'll stop you in the middle of the queue and say, this actually used to be this room, and that's why it's shaped this way. And it is kind of fun. Well, I guess it's more sad that Disney kind of reuses things just to kind of save money, and that's why certain rooms are a little odd or oddly shaped or weird, and then you kind of go, oh yeah, that's why this is like this, or oh, that does kind of fit where this used to be. So it is kind of fun. Epcot's a weird one too because they recently redid it and completely updated the whole front of the park, and unfortunately I don't feel like it's for the better. They did have obviously grand scales plans, and then they kept pushing back and changing it, and then of course blaming COVID or Chapek. Either way, it's definitely a different park than it used to be, and definitely a different park than when it opened as the second park in Disney World in the 80s. So it's definitely crazy to see all the changes, and hopefully we'll continue to see more changes and more growth, because currently some of them are a little bit, to me, stale, a little bit like a Google campus, or just lost a little bit of imagination, ironically, or creativity. So I'm really hoping it keeps evolving and changing, and maybe we'll get rid of some of those buildings that just like cafeterias in the middle of the theme park and make them fun again. But let's kind of deep dive and look into a little bit more of Epcot, what used to be there, what's currently there, and maybe some fun little Easter eggs to talk about along the way. Over in Future World, I should call it, because I still call it Future World, but I still call Hollywood Studios MGM. So I still call Disney Springs Downtown Disney. I don't ever say Pleasure Island just because I never got to go there since I was closed before I was able to. But Future World is the front of the park. Now it's World Discovery, World Nature, World Celebration, which I always forget which one's which, because I'm like, wait, what does this really have to do with anything? But it's kind of like left to right. So Discovery, I believe that's like Test Track, Space, Guardians, because you're discovering. Nature is like the middle area where they put in a lot of trees, and like Moana, I guess, and like the seas, sure. And then Celebration, sure. Feels like a weird kind of, maybe it's a stretch. I like Future World. I miss Future World. But yeah, that's the first thing that's extinct, the name of it. I do get why they changed it, because it is World Showcase in the back, but maybe we didn't need 3 sections in the front. Maybe just call it Future World. Why change it? Let's start on the left side of the park with a pavilion that is completely gone, the Wonders of Life Pavilion. So that operated from 1989 to 2007, and it kind of went seasonal for a while. They also made it into the Festival Center. You saw they did a lot of work on it. The main sign, the archway, fun fact, is the same archway that's now at the Magic Kingdom Toll Plaza. So if you're driving to Magic Kingdom, where it's like arched and says Magic Kingdom, that was the Wonders of Life one that they reused. In here did have different attractions, such as Body Wars, which I definitely remember going on as a kid, which was essentially Star Tours, however, in the human body. Cranium Command, which is a lot of old SNL stars, and you're like in a mind of a 12-year-old, and it's different videos with animatronics. Very like peak Imagineering days. They had a lot of like fitness areas. I remember doing one thing as a kid where like you rode a bike and you would face the screen and it would ride you through Disneyland. It was really neat, and they definitely closed it down. It probably wasn't as busy. Maybe people don't want to wonder about being healthy at Disney World, which sure. But then they were supposed to make it into the Play Pavilion. So this was supposed to be the new area. They started working on it. They started doing all the roof work, which was a little controversial. It's like, okay, do we need a Play Pavilion? But overall, it would be a great area because there's not a lot of stuff for kids at Epcot. So to have a whole pavilion for play and all the Disney characters and they canceled it. And halfway through, and now it's just abandoned. And there's a fence around it, and all the trees inside are overgrowing, and all the bushes, and you can see over it, and it just looks sad. And you're like, how is this here? How is this empty? So I think the Play Pavilion would work fine, or even if you want to call it something different, but more of a digital Disney character-driven pavilion for kids. At the end of the day, just do anything in there. But really, if you could bring back Body Wars, that'd be cool. But the rumor is they gutted Body Wars when they redid Star Tours, so who knows if it's even in there. It would be fascinating, though, to do a tour where you could walk through the abandoned building inside Epcot. I would love that, but I don't want to get kicked out, so we're not going to do that. We'll jump over to the other side to the Living Seas that opened in 1987 and closed in 2005, and that was rebranded as the Seas with Nemo's and Friends. And that was the original attraction for a while. Really didn't change too much. It was more of just slapping on a bunch of characters. Changing the ride. The ride was called like Sea Base Alpha with the ride, and you'd go in the hydrolators, which would make it feel like you're going under like water, and it was like an elevator that was fake, and like the water would shoot up things like Gringotts Bank or something, where it like looks like you're going down, but you're not going anywhere. If you go into the Finding Nemo queue right now, at the merge point where you have the cast member that separates the two lines, and you look up, the whole room is round. That was like that area with the videos. If you look at old videos on YouTube and you see like there's like a 360 kind of video, and you stand there before you get in the hydrolator, same shape, same room and everything. It was the same ride track. However, there was definitely more visible areas. So the whole Crushes Tunnel, that if it makes you dizzy, then you're in good company, because it makes me dizzy too. But that was all for, that has windows, which drives me nuts, because I'm like, oh, there are windows in this part that you could actually see out and see the fish. We don't have to see Crush like swimming in circles. But the old ride track is still there. It's still under the sea. The old ride, I did YouTube it out of curiosity to see what it was. It was a little boring. A lot of the old Epcot stuff I don't think held up well. I love it, and I would love to get to go on it, but I could definitely see nowadays it would probably be a little boring, even though the Nemo ride isn't that great anyway. But yeah, the Living Seas completely just rebranded, and the fun part was you just exit out the same way. It would be like, oh, heading back out, but you wouldn't have to go up the elevator. So a little bit changes there, nothing too major. We'll pop back to the other side, over to Horizons. So Horizons operated from 1983 to 1999. The theme of it was, if we can dream it, then we can do it. And it was completely demolished, this building. And this is one ride that I never got to go on. I remember coming as a kid to the park, and it was seasonal for a while, and because they had a lot more maintenance issues with it. When you look at the ride, it's fascinating. The building's huge. It's kind of a hanging ride where you're in like a capsule that hangs from the top of the ceiling, a very long ride. It'd have 3 different endings with projections and a lot of different animatronics, and it would all be about like where we would be living in the future and communicating. Watching the videos online is really fun. It's funny because a lot of it is like video chatting. Wow, something of the future. So definitely one of those rides that would have to be completely reworked nowadays. The rumor is, and apparently Marty Sklar, one of the Imagineers who worked with Walt, said that there was a sinkhole forming underneath the building, and so they did have to demolish it. So we can assume the ride was kind of dated. That it definitely would need a full update to it. So instead of updating it or demolishing and rebuilding it, they just completely demoed it and made Mission Space. Mission Space, you could tell, is definitely not one of the more popular or successful rides because they have never cloned it. When you look at most of the rides at Disney, they have cloned them over and over, at least the ride system too. Even Test Track is the same, as Cars out in Disneyland. So Mission Space is definitely one of them that I think I can't tell you the last time I rode it, just because I don't feel like getting sick. But Mission Space is on the same site as Horizons was. However, it was a complete demo and redo of what used to be there. I am curious what the timeline is for Mission Space. Would they do a complete update? How busy is it now? They added the restaurant next door, so that's clearly popular. I don't know. I'd say bring back Horizons because I would just love to ride it since I never got to. The next one, sore subject for a lot of people, Journey into Imagination, running from 1983 to 1998. And then it was replaced for a year for a ride that didn't even include Figment for about 1999 to about 2001. The new one opened called Journey into Your Imagination. I remember doing this one coming in 2001. I was young. I don't really remember it too well, but I remember being like, this is weird. And now coming back as an adult, they changed it and they call it Journey into Your Imagination with Figment, where they just kind of plopped Figment in. The original had giant animatronics. It had Dreamfinder, who was a big animatronic, and then also a walk-around character who would make Figment, or I guess find Figment, where he'd search your imagination. If you could find old videos of this attraction, you see, wow, this attraction was detailed, and it was big, and it was special. And now it's completely gutted. They said that the Kodak, remember Kodak? Rest in peace, was a big sponsor for this building, and when they pulled out their sponsorship and were done, they didn't renew. Disney didn't want to keep paying the maintenance on it, which kind of drives me nuts because you think about theme parks like the Efteling. They're running all these rides. How is Disney not able to afford it? They can. They just didn't want to. But the original ride, they basically trimmed down to something that was much cheaper. This one's very screens, not many animatronics, much more simple. Also, the ride track is really interesting. So if you go onto the loading platform, it's currently, that's where the opening scene was, where you kind of go in a big circle around Dreamfinder in his Dreammobile, I guess it was called, Dreamcatcher. And that was the opening scene. So they actually cut the track back. The current building, when you walk in, that was the load station. So definitely I encourage you to look up old YouTube videos and you'd be like, wow, you walked into this building and the ride track was right in front of you. And now you walk into the building and you go up a ramp, and you go up a ramp of where the old ride track used to be, and you load basically like in the first or second scene of the ride. So it is a much shorter ride, not only that. So not only did they cut the ride shorter and make it worse, but yeah, kind of just took away from a lot of it. It is fascinating watching a lot of the old ones because it's mainly omni-movers in this park. One cast member basically saying, here, board here, and one cast member unloading, and no cast members out front. So most of these attractions are run by like 3 or 4 cast members and have these crazy high capacity attractions, which are just people eaters. And now you have rides that you think about how many cast members it takes just to run, like Mission Space, which is so unnecessary. And then you think about how long it takes to load and unload and how slow it is. So the old Imagineers were definitely onto something. I think they were definitely like, oh, we could run these rides that are people eaters, never have a wait. The lines are always moving. Obviously, this was before Fast Pass and Lightning Lane. But then also, budget-wise, somebody should tell Josh tomorrow, hey, bring back the old Imagineers if they're still around, and they can make rides for you that doesn't take 27 people for one room. Looking at you, Pandora Flight of Passage. Now we'll pop next door over to the Land Pavilion, which I remember as a kid, it was always sponsored by Nestle. And inside this pavilion, there was the movie called Magic Journeys, which ran only for 3 years, 1983 to 1986. 3D kind of art film through a child's eyes. I don't really understand. I'm sorry. This is not next door. This is next door in the, not the Land Pavilion. This is in the Imagination Pavilion. I'm jumping around. This is next door in the Imagination Pavilion. And then it went over to Captain EO. That's how I knew I was tripping up. Captain EO ran from 1986 to 1984 originally. This was the Michael Jackson one where Joe Rohde worked on it, and everybody's playing it up like, oh my gosh, this is going to be crazy. And then you see it and you're like, what am I watching? Probably a lot of you that are listening got to see it since it did come back. So this closed in 94 to make way for Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, which then they intertwined the same kind of storyline with the journey into your imagination, having the same character be in it as in the Figment ride. So kind of tied the whole pavilion together. I remember going on this as a kid, loved it. I love the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movies, and it was the same actors doing it. Really kind of fun movie. However, it definitely did get dated by 2010. The movies were old. Nobody really knew it. They closed it to bring back when Michael Jackson passed away in 2010 to Captain EO for 5 more years and brought back Captain EO. Definitely played it up like, get ready for Captain EO. And remember going, wow, I get to see something I never got to do. It's pretty cool. And then seeing it going, what am I watching? And then it closed in 2015, which is now just the Pixar Short Film Festival, which is basically just watching Disney Plus with 3D glasses. So I wish they would bring back some of the old ones. If they could do, it's just a video, so clearly you could swap it out, but bring back Honey, I Shrunk the Kids for a year or two, then bring back Captain EO for a year or two, just to kind of start swapping them out. Anything but things that we can watch on Disney Plus. You're not paying $180 to watch a movie. That's silly. We'll jump back to the other side of the park, over to the Universe of Energy. So that's that big pavilion where Guardians is now. That ran from 1982 to 1996. And the original one was kind of a slow-moving, same thing as the Ellen ride afterwards, attraction. Very cool ride system, but very boring. It was sponsored by Exxon, and it was more like about energy and how we make energy. So a little bit slow. So to make it fun, what do? You throw in Ellen DeGeneres and Bill Nye the Science Guy. Very 96 version of them. 96 to 2017 this ran. And this was like a 40-something minute attraction. And it would start with a movie, and then you'd go into where she would go into her dream, and Alex Trebek was in there. And then you'd go into these giant ride vehicles that would be on this giant turntable, and they would all move slowly through this dinosaur scene and then finish with another movie. The ride system, I've never seen it again used, and still fascinated by how large it was. I'm sure later on in the years it was hard to keep people in their seats and people just got out in the middle of the ride. I'm sure it would be not fun to work, but it closed in 2017 to make way for now Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, and the queue building and where it loads and unloads is basically the entire ride for the other one. To think about how big the footprint is just for Guardians of the Galaxy between the queue and load and unload, since the whole coaster is in that giant building behind there. But yeah, that was the Ellen ride. I remember when that closed, it closed the same day as the Great Movie Ride. And I remember you had to pick like which one did you want to go on. And I remember Ellen, apparently all the cars like died halfway through, and it literally ran out of energy, like something happened, and they had to stop it and evacuate everybody, and everybody got to walk around and take pictures inside the ride for one last time. So I did with my friends. I remember we did one day we went to Ellen in the morning and then went to Great Movie Ride at night to say goodbye to them, because it was sad, kind of a end of an era. Next up is the World of Motion, running from 1982 to 1996. This was replaced by Test Track that didn't open until 1998. So same building, however, they closed off the front, and then they built the track for Test Track out the back into the cast member parking lot. It had a lot of issues at the beginning, Test Track. That's why there's a kind of that 2-year gap. Now there's like a 5-year gap, and we don't think anything of it. But Test Track 1.0 ran from 1998 to about 2001. To 2011. And then in 2012, it opened as Test Track 2.0, which is more the Tron-like version that we most recently got to ride. And then it closed in 2024, and then we'll be reopening later this year as Test Track 3.0. So very interesting to see how it kind of evolves. The rumor is it's going to be more like the World of Motion, focusing on transportation, which was the original one. I remember doing it as a kid. Don't remember much about World of Motion. Remember the ride vehicle very being like, if you ever did like the Hershey Chocolate World Tour, that's what it was like. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it kind of comes back as Test Track 3.0 and what they do to kind of bring it back around to maybe more of the original theme. I do like the original theme with the Test Track, the test dummies over whatever the last one was. That one was kind of fine. Next is Communicore, which ran from 1982 to 1994. Now, this was like a building where you could experience new technologies. In the 80s, it was great, and then obviously technology started catching up so quickly that things started becoming super dated. It was turned into Innoventions and the Creations Shop and Creations and Connections Cafe, because there was two sides of it. So it was like the main Future World site. Innoventions East opened in 1994 to 2019. To give you an idea, that's where Connections Cafe is now. And Innoventions West, 1994, and that one closed a little earlier in 2015. And that's now where Moana, The Journey of Water is, and Communicore Hall, the cafeteria is. But basically, Innoventions, I remember going there when I first moved down to Florida, and it was still a little dated at that point, but as a kid, it was cool. They would have things where, I remember you could send a video message to somebody and like, what's this person's email? Let's make a video and send it to them. And at the time, if you're listening and you're a little younger, you're probably like, that's not that impressive. It was in the 90s, okay? And the early 2000s, that was cool. And they had some technology things like a Dance Dance Revolution kind of thing before that became a Dance Dance Revolution I remember doing. They had a bunch of different things, but once again, it was one of those more World's Fair styles that kind of got dated a little quickly, and the technology couldn't keep up, and it relied heavily on sponsorship, so you needed sponsored attractions, so it was constantly being changed out, but then there was a lot of empty areas, so a great place for air conditioning. Let's just say that. And that's where the Mickey and Friends meet and greet were too, and then that got replaced by another Mickey and Friends meet and greet. And then we just basically lost the overhead area to cover in the rain and a big air conditioning building. So, like I said, kind of missed the old Epcot. But it did have a weird smell to it. I remember that. It did smell. Let's talk about the land attractions. Not like before, like now. The land attractions had a movie in it that went through a few times. So the first one was called Symbiosis, which ran from 1982 to 1985. And then in 1995, it became the Circle of Life. And I remember seeing that one with Timon and Pumbaa. And that was basically just Timon and Pumbaa with like recycled footage. And now in 2018, it opened as Awesome Planet, which is definitely one of those that you see once and you're like, I'm good. And it has the dad from Modern Family pretending like he's a realtor, just like he's a Modern Family, trying to like sell the planet, but talk about, things that we could do to improve it. Kind of just makes you feel bad. The other one, probably one of the things I missed the most, Kitchen Cabaret, ran from 1982 to 1994. And then 1994 to 2004 was Food Rocks. And this is the veggie fruit. If you remember from Epcot Forever, I remember being excited seeing that fireworks show and hearing that again. But this is where Soarin' is now. So that opened in 2004, Soarin', and then Soarin' Around the World, and then came back to the old Soarin'. I still wish they could make both of them, and you get to choose when you get up ahead, say, do you want to go over California or over the world? Don't know why we can't get that option. But this was over by where the restrooms are by Soarin', right behind there. So it wasn't built out of the building like Soarin' is, but right behind the walls there is where Food Rocks was. And that was where you kind of sat there, and it was all animatronics, and the kitchen opened up, and they would teach you about eating healthy food. So noticing a trend, a lot of healthier food options and how to stay fit and stuff like that kind of went away. Let's go over to World Showcase, and we'll talk about another one that was hard to lose, which was Maelstrom, closing in 2014 in the Norway Pavilion and is now frozen ever after. This is definitely a great example of why can't we have both? Also, why is a frozen boat ride when the water's not frozen? But that's another question for another day. Basically, took the same track. They kind of changed around the starting point and added a little bit. But overall, it's the same track, which is weird for when they clone this attraction. And then they just clone basically what this is, which was just Maelstrom. Just feels a little lazy. Over in Mexico, El Rio de Tiempo ran from the River Time. That was 1982 to 2007. And then they rebranded it. Same ride, but Grand Fiesta Tour with Donald and the Three Caballeros, just to kind of throw an IP character on there. And then China had the Wonder of China show, which ran from 1982 to 2003. And then was replaced with the current show, which is still running today. They did announce a few years ago in D23 that the show is going to be replaced. However, I went to go see it recently. I was like, oh, maybe it's the new one. It's not. It's still the same show from 2004, 2003. Canada, they had a few different versions. They had from 1982 to 2007. Then they had another one from 2007 to 2019. This was the one with Martin Short. And then they opened up the other one in 2019, 2020. I always say with Moira and Johnny, with the show that they currently have now, Canada Far and Wide. And when you hear that it's the ones from Schitt's Creek, so you're like, oh, it's going to be funny, Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara. It's not. They gave them a very basic script and kind of just narrate the beauty of Canada. So kind of a missed opportunity to make it more funny. And last but not least on my list is Kim Possible. So beep, beep, boop, boop. Back in the day, this was where you'd go around the countries and they would give you a flip phone and you would complete different tasks on your flip phone. And then it became Phineas and Ferb. And now it's DuckTales World Showcase Adventure, and now you just do it on your own phone. So they used to have stations around the park where you picked up your phone and you dropped off your phone, and they would have screens on your phone. Pretty cool. And now it's one that you could just do on your own phone since basically everybody has a smartphone. So it's one of those attractions that evolved and is actually a lot of fun and highly recommend playing if you have a family there or if you just want to do something different. I'll end with a quick fun fact. So the Three Caballeros attraction in the Grand Fiesta Tour are actually from the Mickey Mouse review that closed in Tokyo Disney in 2015. So if you rode the ride when it first opened in 2007, the final scene was just a screen with the Three Caballeros. And then in about 2015, when that ride closed, the show closed over in Tokyo Disney, they brought the animatronics over and added them into the ride. But hopefully you learned something. I know I did. And with that, I will see you at the parks.
Thanks for taking a ride with Average Joe Orlando.
You made it! I knew you would.
Is everyone okay? Hope you still want to open an account.
Say cheese! See you later!
Thanks, everybody. You were brilliant.
At this time, gather up your personal belongings and take your small grubs by their grubby little hands as you exit. Thank you.